Okay, good afternoon for our friends dialing in on the East Coast, and good morning to the rest of the country. My name is Anthony Mento. I appreciate you joining today as the participants start to flow in. We will get started in just a moment. I'm actually going to switch the presenter view and the full screen view, so that should give you um, a full look at the slides. Just one more moment, and the balance of attendees are being let into the meeting, and we can get started. So, thank you for joining us. Today's topic is selling life insurance in a changing legislative environment. And oh, by the way, it is an election year. So, I'm going to cover several different techniques, where we are today, a reminder of the transfer tax overview, some planning opportunities 2024, and then we're going to bring in a guest from Finseca to give us a Finseca update and a fiduciary 3.0. His name is Jordan DeBettencourt. He's going to really articulate some threats that are related to our business that are more imminent than one would think, and quite disturbing when you hear what the Department of Labor is looking to do. So I'm just going to touch on very quickly the transfer tax system in the United States, right? And you really want to just, when it comes to estate planning, it's two really big words. You want to answer three questions, right? Where's your stuff go? Who's in charge? And what are the rules? And there's really only three places your stuff can go, and that's family, charity, or the IRS. The transfer tax system we live in, we're in a country with a 40% transfer tax. So we are taxed on the privilege, quote unquote, privilege of transferring wealth. If you transfer wealth during life, it's a gift tax. If you transfer at death, it's an estate tax. They have been married, per se, right? No pun intended here. So the gift tax and the estate tax are one and the same, and amounts are uniform. So, what weapons do we have to combat this 40%, transfer tax or privilege, quote unquote, privilege in transferring wealth? And, first and foremost is that every given year, you have your annual exclusions, which represent $18,000 per person or $36,000 if married. So a married couple can give $36,000 per year. It will not count against their lifetime exemption to any beneficiary that they feel is important to them. Secondly, the next weapon is that we have an unlimited marital deduction. So there is an unlimited amount of assets that can pass from one deceased spouse to the next living spouse, right? There is no tax imposed upon the transfer between married spouses. There is a gift tax and estate tax exemption, meaning there's no 40% tax imposed until you reach and exceed that exemption. This year, that exemption is $13,610,000 per person. So a married couple can transfer, call it 27.2, right? 27.2. That's a big number of wealth to the next generation without being exposed to that 40% transfer tax. And the same goes for the generation skipping. So, but now let me remind you that this is temporary, right? This exemption is scheduled along with a host of other favorable tax laws, scheduled to sunset on December 31st, 2025. So, what does that mean, and where are we, right? What is happening? So let me just give you, let me paint you a picture. I sat in on one of the most informative webinars of my professional career when it comes to estate planning that Prudential put on. And they had an extremely talented attorney kind of giving us like the landscape and the environment that we're playing in now, right? Our friends at Nationwide were calling this like the golden age of estate planning, and our friends at Prudential are calling this the platinum age of estate planning. So whatever you want to call it, there's a really neat exercise that Prudential took us through, where they stated If we were to create and hang a whiteboard in our office and invent 7 or 8 things, tools, planning tools that we can use to combat this wealth transfer tax system, one would argue that we have every single one of those 7 or 8 tools we would like to invent that would be ideal to combat the 40% transfer tax. So let me start with number one. You saw that exemption at $13 million per taxpayer, call it 26 and change, 27 for a married couple. That is historically highest gift, estate, and GST tax exemptions in history, right? That would definitely go on our whiteboard as the greatest invention to combat the 40% wealth transfer tax rule. Secondly, we would want to be able to value certain businesses at lower numbers, right? It would be really advantageous if we can go down the list of our balance sheet and discount every asset that's listed on that balance sheet, right? To suppress our net worth. That would go on the whiteboard. We have that available to us. Dynasty trust. So most folks that don't understand trust planning won't realize that you may be able to escape a wealth transfer tax through the use of trust one generation, or maybe two, but definitely not 3, 4, or 5. Eventually, those assets are dispersed out to a beneficiary and then subject to their estate tax of, call it 40%, right? Dynastic languages in trust are available to us today that allow us to perpetuate wealth 4, 5, 6, 7 generations. That would definitely go on the whiteboard as a planning tool that we would want to use to combat this 40% transfer tax. Discounting businesses, real estate, right, is widely accepted. 30 to 40%. Lack of marketability, not voting, non-voting, right? Going down the balance sheet again, discounting the assets would be a whiteboard item that we could use to combat this privilege of transferring wealth. Tax favored status of life insurance. Cash value grows tax-free. 101 says the death benefits are income tax-free to the beneficiaries. Amazing tool we have at our disposal. That would go on the whiteboard. Sales to irrevocable trusts, where you can quite literally take an asset that has appreciated 10 times over, sell it to your family irrevocable trust, never pay capital gains. It is excluded from your gross taxable estate when it comes to valuing your estate, overall gross estate. And if I couple that with a grantor trust language, you get to pay the income taxes of those assets on behalf of your children, grandchildren, and future descendants. So what that means is I can sell an asset to a trust, never pay capital gains. It's excluded from my taxable estate, yet it is me for income tax purposes, which then further depresses my estate and benefits the children and grandchildren because that asset gets to compound faster when there are no taxes impeding the growth. That would go on the whiteboard. Non-equity split dollar life insurance. This is so cool, particularly on a survivorship chassis. I'll get into the calculation, how you can quite literally transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars of premium, even millions of dollars of premium, without recognizing anything of significance when it comes to gift tax reporting. That will go on the whiteboard. And then lastly, if you get there, we are in one of the most optimal environments for charitable planning. Different techniques, different strategies, all the charitable plans are in place. Now, what's to come? If you watch 60 Minutes Sunday night, the Fed chair warned that we are on an unsustainable fiscal path. Okay. If we do nothing, and Congress, I'm referring to, not us on this call, but if Congress does nothing, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that went into place, call it 9 years ago, are set to expire. And we're going to revert to 2017 tax environment. So what does that mean? The gift and estate tax exemption will reset from that 13 million per person down to 5, and they're going to add back some inflation. Most experts recently at Heckerling determined that this number is going to be somewhere around 6 or 7. 6 or 7 is a lot less than 13. Right? That's if we do nothing. Now, we are in election year. We do have $34 trillion of debt. Will Biden decrease the exemption? Will the Democratic Party push this back down to quote unquote historic norms? Obama pushed for 3.5 million. This is not a political call. We're a political organization. But is this a risk? Yes. And a bigger risk is that legislative proposals are brewing. And just 1 year ago, we were one senator away from passing the 499.5% Act and enacting a 2024 budget that took away discounted business valuations, would eliminate step up in basis, which is arguably one of the biggest threats of all the proposed legislation that has occurred over the last several years. Eliminating the step up in basis, where if you can't document what basis is on an asset, the IRS will assume it is 0. The 499.5% Act, we're going to change the tax status of grantor trust. So that whole concept where we use the whiteboard item to pay the current and future income taxes on behalf of your beneficiaries, your family, your children, your grandchildren, your future descendants, that would go away. The whole concept of selling an asset or loaning assets to grantor trusts and never paying capital gains would have gone away. And there would be without question, a limited duration of dynastic type trusts where you could not perpetuate that estate tax-free, let's say, bubble for 3, 4, 5 different generations. That was almost taken away from us. So I will remind you, one senator away from losing those very important planning techniques. I'm going to keep going. So who do you want to talk to about this expiration and this changing legislative environment? Well, I like to kind of break things down and compartmentalize. The first demographic you're going to want to talk to are the Henrys. High earners, not rich yet. 250,000 of income, less than 3 million of assets. You want to teach them, and I'll get into what you want to talk to them about, but you're going to want to talk to them about income taxes and planning in retirement and distribution planning. The second demographic is the high net worth, the 3 million to 20 million. They know they want to do something. They need to do something because a lot of these really important tools may be taken away from them, but they're just not ready to make significant gifts and lose control of those assets because they have weddings to pay for, college to pay for. They have a lifetime of retirement to save for. They're not ready to just push all the control outside of their taxable estate. And then the third demographic are the ultra high net worth of 20 million and up. And we'll talk through some ideas that you can do for each one of these demographics. What do you do now? So this isn't a very compliant webinar. My partner, Adam DeMarco, is probably going to hate this, but I'm not going to kind of sugarcoat what you should and should not do. We're going to tell you what to do, and what you want to do now is everything that the IRS wanted to take away from us a year ago, right? You're going to want to take advantage of current tax laws, gift and estate tax exemption. If you can afford to push wealth outside of your taxable estate, you're going to want to do so, right? That's 13 million down to 6. You want to make your annual gift tax exclusions. Do it now and do it early in the year, right? You want to draft your grantor trusts, fund them, create spousal lifetime access language, and create your substitution powers, and right, do everything you can while it exists. You want to discount, you want to go down your balance sheet, you want to hire business appraisers, real estate appraisers, you want to discount your financial statement as very best you can. You want to create your dynasty trust. You want to perpetuate wealth, 3, 4, 5, 6 different generations. Do everything that they tried to take away from us. Our recommended approach, you want to be logical, sequential, and understandable, right? You want to create the same process no matter the client, whether they're worth $1 million or $1 billion. It's the same process. We're going to get into a 4-step approach on how you can talk to consumers. Fewer words, you're better than a lot of words. Smaller words, better than bigger words, right? We want to like hit the basics, set expectations, and then do what you say you're going to do. Don't settle for second best. This is a big one. In 2012, we were in a similar situation where the exemption was about to expire. Many people procrastinated. And in the second half of 2012, high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals could not find a competent attorney to work with because they were completely overwhelmed by the influx of requests. They could not hire a business appraisal. They could not hire a valuation expert. They were completely overwhelmed. Don't settle for second best or pay exorbitant fees. Establish your relationships now and start planning. There are a lot of things you can do. So we talked about the 4-step approach, right? It's simple. It's the same 4 steps, whether $1 million or $1 billion in net worth. You want to draft your core documents. This is so easy. Establish a relationship with a law firm that you trust, that's pro-life insurance, that do a nice job with your clients. Your revocable trust, your pour-over wills, your durable power, your living will, your healthcare directive. Easy. Everybody in the world should have this. Secondly, you want to discount your assets as very best you can. You may want to recapitalize your corporations. You may want to form family limited partnerships. You probably want to fractionalize your assets. Change some of the stock categories from voting to non, right? Third, you want to move assets if you're ready and provide liquidity. If you're not ready, this is where you establish some life insurance trust. You go through underwriting, you figure out, do I want to transfer annual exclusions? Do I want to actually move assets outside of my estate? Do I not want to do any of the above? Do I want to lend assets to my trust so that I can get it back and maintain access, liquidity, control? Do I want to sell discounted assets to my irrevocable grantor trust in exchange for a promissory note that will give me income, right? Here's where you start to have fun and actually take action. And with your insurance professionals on the line, this is where you start to talk through the sales process. And then lastly, you want to check your charitable box. If you have any charitable desires, right, figure out what you want to do. Charitable remainder trust, charitable lead trust, private foundations, donor advised funds. If you get there, you want to hit that charitable plan now. But it's, again, the same 4 steps, 1 million or 1 billion. So let me take you through some techniques in action, and we'll get into some sales ideas, and then we'll bring Jordan up on the line. So Mr. and Mrs. Business, here we're going to talk through spousal lifetime access trust, right? Access, liquidity, control. Maybe not directly, but through my spouse. Irrevocable life insurance trust, grantor trust, dynastic language, non-equity split dollar life insurance. This is a lot of fun. So 50-year-old male, 48-year-old female, they have 2 daughters, $50 million net worth, right? Not uncommon in today's world. Net worth of high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals have exploded, right? And that 50 million is comprised of 26 million in closely held business stock, 10 million in LLC, real estate, primary residence, cash and marketable securities, annual income of 1.75 million. Gather the facts, right? The more data points you have, the more effective you can be, the more opportunities you will uncover. Gather the facts. Client's goals, just like anyone else. You want to retain control of the company. They want to maintain access to their wealth, yet they want to provide liquidity for estate taxes. Minimize the impact to the kids. Let's bring them some liquidity in the time of need. So I'm a huge fan, again, of gathering the facts and calculating the pain. You're worth $50 million today. Your estate tax liability today is $9.6 million. Forget what it's going to look like 700 days from now when the exemption is repealed, and forget what it looks like at life expectancy, which is almost 40 years from now, right? We're going to get there. But today, you have a $10 million exposure, Mr. and Mrs. Clark. Again, what do? Well, you do the same four things we just talked about. You draft your core documents, you discount your assets as best you can, you create liquidity through the form of a spousal lifetime access trust for the benefit of one another. You're going to acquire some term insurance to protect against the early death of the spouse, so you don't want to be disinherited from your own trust. And then you're going to create your liquidity. Buy some second die life insurance, couple that with the non-equity private split dollar arrangement, and you're off and running. So I'm going to walk you through. You had $26 million of S Corp stock. How hard is it to recapitalize the S Corp stock? You have 10%, you create 10% voting, 90% non-voting. You can discount the non-voting, right? What have I just done? I took my $26 million asset and I decreased the value. That was step two, right after I did my core documents. Now I'm getting involved discounting. I'm going to move to create liquidity, spousal lifetime access trust, right? I'm going to push assets outside my taxable estate with spousal lifetime access. So in the event that I need access, liquidity, and control of those assets, I can get it back through my spouse. Okay. Next, you want to figure out what to do. What assets am I going to put in the spousal lifetime access trust? Well, maybe I just want to take advantage of one exemption and not both. I can have Mrs. transfer her equity in the business to an irrevocable trust for the benefit of Mr. Okay, that covers Mr. Mr. can transfer his equity in the business for Mrs. Right? We want to be careful. We want to make sure that these aren't non-reciprocal trusts, but that is certainly one way that you can protect one another and push assets outside of your estate and maintain access, liquidity, and control. If you don't want to transfer or gift, you're certainly allowed to sell assets to your irrevocable trust in exchange for a promissory note. This was that technique where I talked about. You avoid paying capital gains tax. It's not you for estate planning purposes, yet it is you for income planning purposes, and it's really cool wealth transfer strategy. How do slats work? Fairly easily, right? Your spouse can tap into, if you set up a spousal lifetime access trust, your spouse can tap in as a named beneficiary, his spouse is a named beneficiary, that spouse can tap into the asset anytime he or she wishes, right? The risk is that if your spouse predeceases you, you've essentially disinherited yourself from your own assets. So what we'll do is we'll just simply buy a $10 million, 20-year term policy on the life of the grantor and the life of the spouse. It's really, really cost effective. And if you are disinherited from your spousal lifetime access trust, well, then there's a couple of things you can do. One, you have liquidity from the death benefit because your spouse predeceased you, or the beneficiary of the spousal lifetime access trust then reverts to the kids and you can access the wealth through the kids. So again, pushing assets outside the taxable estate while maintaining access, liquidity, and control. What happens to the issue of estate taxes due, right? Well, why couldn't we acquire a second to die life insurance policy owned by an irrevocable life insurance trust using non-equity split dollar with that S Corp company being the premium payer to fund the policy? In the first year, right? Remember, male 50, female 48. The first year, that deemed gift to the islet using the calculation that the IRS gives us, Table 2001, on 2 lives is a $45.54 deemed gift. So pretty big policy to be recognized very little income or gift tax exposure, $45.54. So the outcome is that Mr. Business retained complete control of the company, right? Life insurance mitigates the issue of the SLAT and early death of disinheriting yourself from your own assets. The second to die policy provides liquidity for any estate taxes due, particularly if you have a note outstanding of selling assets to a trust. And Mr. and Mrs. Business have all the flexibility in the world to redirect assets to individuals or charities through substitution powers. I'm going to take you through one other case and we'll get into some sales ideas. Mrs. Executive, right? Not everyone you come across is going to be worth $50 million. So Mrs. Executive is 45, unmarried, 2 teenage kids. She makes really good income and net worth is 10 million. Last I checked, I did go to public school, but 10 million is less than 13 million, which is the exemption. She does not have a federal estate tax issue. And that 10 million is made up of her residence, marketable securities, and retirement accounts. One thing I noticed right away is that her assets, although they've been really well allocated to different asset classes, they really haven't been diversified among different tax locations, right? The marketable securities is a capital asset. The retirement accounts are an ordinary asset, but there's nothing in tax freeze. So here's a wonderful opportunity to start educating about the tax location of your assets, right? So her goals were diversify the portfolio, prepare for the unknown, establish a plan for charitable giving through education with the kids, and just keep things simple, right? So the first thing we want to do is educate. What are the effective taxes in retirement? What are distribution rates in retirement? How do I buffer against down markets, right? Utilize the Ernst & Young white paper. It's an absolutely incredible piece to send out to clients. Talk about the difference between allocation and location, right? Remember the 60 Minutes episode on Sunday, right? $34 trillion of debt. This is unsustainable. We always talk about allocation. You need to have X% of large cap and mid cap, emerging markets, and international. But no one talks about the location. This woman had a 50-50 split between ordinary taxed assets and capital taxed assets and had 0 in tax-free assets. So why do we want to talk about this? Because it does come time to retire. Depending on what the tax environment looks like then, it is certainly more effective to take assets from tax-free buckets than all ordinary buckets or all capital buckets or a combination thereof, right? Maybe this particular woman wanted $350,000 each year in retirement. Well, if she was in an all ordinary location of all of her assets, right? 401ks, profit sharing, things of that nature, the effective tax rate, right, as she graduates through the different brackets, different phases, was 21%. I would tend to think that number is going to go up in time, given the outlook of the deficit that we have. But if you just split that $350,000 need in between 150 from ordinary, 100 from capital, and 100 from tax-free, we change the effective rate to 11%. That's a $33,000 tax saving by just diversifying the location of those assets. So again, I like to calculate the pain. Yes, you're worth $10 million today. The exemption is $13 million. You don't have a federal estate tax today. But if you plan on living until 2026, you're 45 years old, I think you're going to get there. Your exposure is $1.8 million. So calculating the pain is very important, right? If she just lived off of her salary and assets grew at 5% with 3% inflation and no change in the tax law, a $0 federal estate tax liability today turns into $1.8 million in 2026. What's the plan? It's the same 4 steps we just talked about, right? draft the core documents, create your ILET, acquire $6 million of permanent life insurance, talk about tax diversification, tax location, right? Establish a donor advised fund, name the children as successor advisors, teach them the charitable purpose, right? And you kind of check all the boxes, the same 4 steps. So the outcome here, protect against incapacity and the death and early death, right? Diversify again, provide income replacement to the family. Children are going to inherit the death benefit in irrevocable trust, which are then protected from divorce and creditors and estate taxes. And they have this financial toolkit to substitute, right, assets and manage wealth effectively. And they've learned charitable giving through mom, right? Again, the same 4 steps. A lot of clients get stuck on these things, right? They don't have a taxable estate. Well, I know you don't, but did you know that in 30 years at 5%, you're going to be worth 4 times the amount that you're worth today? And in 20 years, you're going to be worth 2.6 times what you're worth today. And that's a modest 5% growth, right? We have entrepreneurs hitting 15, 20, 25. The S&P went up 24% last year, right? These numbers get really big. So you may not want to give away your stuff while you're alive, but you know what? That's okay. You can gift and sell assets to irrevocable trust for one another through spousal lifetime access trust. We talked about that. If you're unmarried, acquire life insurance inside an ILET, right? Lend money to your ILET. You can always get it back. You create a cash value solution inside the ILET. The death benefit passes income and estate tax free, yet you still have access to all the liquidity embedded in those policies. Irrevocable is a terrible word, right? Who's the trust for? Is it you or your spouse? Who's in charge? You or your spouse or a third party? It's not like you're giving up complete control. If you draft properly and you include different flexibility mechanisms like substitution of powers of appointment, trust protectors, you're in pretty good shape. You can kind of have your cake and eat it too. If you feel like you're going to wait until 2026, remember, like, don't settle for second best. We don't know what's going to happen in the 2024 election, but if nothing happens in Congress, the exemption is dropping January 1st, 2026. So why not transfer assets to trust now or start planning through different techniques like spousal lifetime access trust or survivorship standby trust? The worst that can happen is that you get a layer of creditor and divorce protection, and you get to grow the assets outside of your taxable estate, and you get to benefit from discount business valuations. Like, take advantage of the tools that are available to us today. If it's complicated, fine. Let's start slow. Get your revocable trust done, and let's put together an ILET, buy some second to die, and let's fund the need. What if I don't know how much I want to give? That's okay. You want to solve the tax problem. Number 1, do the calc, solve the tax problem. Create trusts that are good enough for now. You can evolve with them over time. Build flexibility into the trust, right? Again, powers of appointment, trust protectors. There are so many cool things you can do in our business to coincide with these planning techniques. And I'm going to just kind of walk you through very quickly, and this will come out in a recording. And I'll also send out a few templates. But we have 10 really good sales ideas here that promote the use of life insurance to solve a lot of these issues, right? In a rising interest rate environment, graded premium designs are really popular, right? We're generating 11, 12% IRRs at life expectancy, particularly on different survivorship contracts. You don't have to pay level premiums. If you find the contracts that let you enter in at a lower pace, right? You don't have to max fund every contract and make these huge transfers. You can fund minimum premiums, continue to grow your assets. You can catch these policies up later on if you have the right features like option C and you find the contracts that are flexible. This is all the same policy right here. I'm just showing you 4 different funding strategies with the same exact contract using option C death benefit. And at the very bottom, if you are interested in making a gift or your clients have made a gift already, what a great asset to include inside this trust. This can be used in a couple of those different demographics, the Henrys, the high net worth, and the ultra high net worth in these graded premium designs. Really cool stuff. SPIAs are back, right? Arguably, the best planning strategy in the world is to die with a net worth of zero, which means you have perfectly calculated your expenditures through your life expectancy. Guess what a SPIA does, particularly a life-only SPIA? It's worth zero date of death. And we just got a huge lift in payout percentages, right? July 2020, a male 70 could get like a 6.8 distribution rate. Today, it's like upwards of 9. You're getting a lot of leverage through SPIAs. And who's to say you can't take that SPIA income and go out and buy a life insurance policy to replace the asset and live off of the arbitrage? It's really cool stuff. You're quite literally bankrupting the estate and having the asset reappear through the irrevocable life insurance trust. You take the income from the SPIA, you pay your taxes, which are very favorable when it comes to exclusion ratios if you're using non-qualified dollars. You make gifts to your life insurance trust with grantor substitution powers and dynastic language, and you buy life insurance outside the estate. There will be an arbitrage here, particularly in more mature clients, and you get to create some excess cash flow. Non-equity split dollar, I showed you earlier, $10 million policy on a male 50, female 48, triggered a $45 gift recognition. So how this works is you take table 2001. This is a big miss in the code, by the way. You take the cost per thousand, right, the rate on the IRS table 2001, and you multiply insured 1 times insured 2, and you get the dollar amount. You take that dollar amount and you divide by 1,000, and that's the joint rate per thousand. So what I'm showing you here, 2 65-year-olds, male, female, 200,000 of premium to generate $10 million of 20 pay SGUL to generate $10 million of death benefit. The joint economic rate in column 8 is 16 cents per thousand. So the economic benefit for 2 65-year-olds is $1,575. That is really cool planning, right? 200,000 of premium to have a trust on 10 million of death benefit, gift recognition of $1,575. That's why this is on the whiteboard. The unlimited gift for your uber wealthy clients who have blown out all their exemption, right? AFR is like 4%, right? Interfamily loans have been around forever. So who's to say you can't make an interfamily loan to your grantor, dynastic, irrevocable trust, right? With spousal lifetime access. You can get really cool with this. You really have a lot of fun with this. No one says I have to service interest if I make a loan to my trust, right? If I make a personal loan to my trust that call it 4.5%, I'm allowed to accrue that loan interest, right? If I've used up all my annual exclusions and all my exemption, I'm allowed to loan money and let the interest accrue and not have to deal with any of those gift issues. As long as I go out and buy something inside the trust that will grow equal to or faster than that 4%-ish accruing note. And guess what does that? Life insurance, right? Some of the earlier slides will show you graded premium designs that were generating 11% IRR, right? What you're looking at here is a combination of 60% variable, 40% whole life, and that certainly creates an arbitrage over the intra-family loan and creates a significant transfer to the children, grandchildren, and future descendants in column 12, which is why we call this strategy the unlimited gift. You can sell assets to your intentionally defective grantor trust. We talked about this earlier, and in the sake of time, we're going to blow right through this, and I'll push you the slides. Dynastic trusts. There is a huge difference between non-dynasty trusts and dynasty trusts. And then we're going to include a third category using an insured dynasty trust. This is a tried and true technique. It's illustrated really well in Innsmark, one of the oldest life insurance visual planning tools in the industry. you pass assets utilizing life insurance 4 generations, and you will find an 856% increase gain over a non-dynasty trust. Really, really powerful stuff. Loan rescue. Probably come across a lot of clients who were involved in premium finance designs. You are allowed, you have every right as a policy owner, provided the bank holding the collateral assignment allows you to, and they'll usually work with you. It is perfectly well within your rights to go internally into your policy and take a policy loan to then pay off the bank that you borrowed money from to finance premiums. And you'll see that 9 out of 10 times in today's world, the policy loan will be at a far more competitive interest rate than the commercial bank loan. So why wouldn't you take, just like paying down your highest debt credit card first, highest interest rate credit card first, right? Same concept. You want to take internally from your policy and pay off the commercial bank. But if your internal policy loan is 4% and the commercial bank is 7%, you want to consolidate that debt. Yes, you're creating debt within your policy, but there are companies that will assume that policy through 1035 exchange and repurpose the debt on their balance sheet at more favorable terms. So, absent of getting into the weeds and stealing time from Jordan, I'm going to kind of push through this. Conceptually understand what I'm saying. If your internal policy borrowing privilege is at 2.5%, then you're going to want to borrow from your policy and pay down that commercial bank who's lending you money at 7.79. You can stay with the existing policy and service that debt, or you can look to 1035 exchange to better terms, even better terms than that 2.5. Maybe you get a wash loan in year 1, or you have lower COIs in the new policy. That's definitely something to explore if you're in a gain position and you finance contracts. If you're not in a gain position, I'm sorry, I've done the math 100 different ways. You need to surrender out and then look to acquire a non-finance policy. You're going to have to pay the piper eventually. So, let's do it now before the loan continues to run away from you. A really cool strategy that I'll spend a little bit more time on than the prior couple slides that I'm actually employing for myself. And again, these are the clients that the high net worth, but not the ultra high net worth, right? I can't afford to make huge gifts outside of my taxable estate. I have 4 kids, none of which went to college yet. I have 3 daughters. I have 3 weddings to pay for. Although I think I have to pay for my son nowadays because it seems to be like this split between the groom's family and not to get off topic here. But so we have 4 weddings to pay for, 4 colleges to pay for, and I would like to enjoy retirement someday. I'm 47 with 4 kids. I don't feel like that's ever coming. But what I can do here is Anthony owns Anthony's policy. I'm not giving up access, liquidity, or control. Anthony owns Anthony's policy. The only difference is that I'm going to establish the Anthony J. Mento Irrevocable Trust. It's going to have dynastic language. It's going to be a grantor trust, and it's going to have spousal access. All the cool things that are on my whiteboard that we almost got taken away from us just a year ago. Very simply, on my life insurance application, remember, Anthony owns Anthony's policy. I do have the right to name a contingent owner. There's an error here. I said contingent beneficiary. Contingent owner. I will name the contingent owner my trust so that at my death, right, columns 1 through 6 are all the policy values. I'm showing you a max funded survivorship VUL. I like VUL. I own whole life. I own IUL. It's time for me to acquire a VUL. I think we're going to do okay as the market kind of settles in and corrects itself over the next several years, and I'll come out of this thing in a good spot. I get to enjoy the income, the tax-free distributions. I get to enjoy the death benefit while I'm alive, right? Knowing that that's there for the family. But at my death, the contingent owner goes from me to my irrevocable trust. At that point in time, there will be a gift equal to the PERC or ITR. All right? I'm going to preserve some exemption, right? I'm going to preserve some exemption upon my death, and it's going to slip to the family dynasty trust. And at that point in time, my spouse can access distributions through spousal lifetime access privileges and or the 8 to 9 to possibly $10 million death benefit will then be passed to my irrevocable trust for the benefit of the kids, grandkids, and future descendants. So here's an opportunity to have your cake and eat it too. If you do like financing, right, you can take a wait and see approach. You do not have to finance the max non-MEC premium today. You can build in survivorship term riders, you can minimum fund IUL. There are things you can do to enter a permanent solution, yet you're going to want to control the borrowing cost. So there may be a better time in the near future where you can start borrowing in a lower interest rate environment where you're going to want to then uptick accelerate the funding of these contracts. I'm going to take some time away from Jordan if I don't push through here. Life insurance is also the solution. And in my opinion, the new stretch IRA, whereby if you're not familiar with the 10-year rule and the Secure Act, you should get familiar with it. IRA assets need to be kicked out as ordinary income by 10 years. You can no longer stretch through a younger generation. I just kind of ripped through this really quick. Again, slides will be available to you. Recording will be available to you. So we will make sure that if we rip through anything, too quickly, then by all means, you'll have an opportunity to review. So at this time, I would like to bring on Jordan DeBettencourt at Fonseca. If you are not involved in Fonseca, you should be involved in Fonseca. They do an unbelievable job advocating for us in our industry. I think Jordan is on the call. I want to make sure he is here. Jordan, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the attendees here. I'm excited to have you. I've been a member of Fonseca for 13 years now. There are times more than ever where you need advocacy in our business. And Jordan's going to capture some of the highlights of the Fiduciary 3.0. Without further ado, Jordan DeBettencourt.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. And just a quick question, Anthony, do I have permissions to share the screen?
Sure do, my friend. You have just been promoted to a panelist.
Look at there we go. All right. Up in the big leagues. Can you hear me?
Sir.
All right. I'm just going to go ahead and share my slide real quick. Awesome. Let's get this going. Play from start. All right. So I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because I'm happy to take questions via the chat as we go. But so Anthony, super big thank you for having us and thank you for the intro. So Jordan DeBettencourt, run the membership team at Fonseca. So all things new members, engaging our members kind of flows up through me. What is Fonseca? We're a national trade association of approaching 10,000 members. Which we keep growing, which is awesome. We are, sorry, excuse me. We're the trade association that represents financial security professionals. Who are financial security professionals? It's all of you on this call. It's leaders and advisors from around the country. As I said, we're national that believe in the holistic financial planning approach. With life insurance, both permanent, terminate, annuities, and investments. And I was so glad, Anthony, you mentioned this earlier, because why do we do that? Because we know it's objectively the best approach. This Ernst & Young study that Anthony referenced proves that. For those of you that haven't seen it, it essentially says that 30 cents of each dollar of savings that consumers apply to either term or permanent life insurance and annuities achieve objectively better results than just investment-only approaches. If you've been in the business for a while, you're like, yeah, I've known that. It's a difference between, yeah, I've known that, and a third-party verification from a company like EY that proves it. We think this is a super important, client-facing piece, as Anthony said, and this really is our North Star as an organization, is the best way I would put it. So at Fonseca, we've been busy over the last couple of years. If you're like, I haven't heard of Fonseca, partly because we've only really been around for 3 years. In 2020, ALU and Gamma merged. ALU, Top Life Producer Group, and Gamma International, focused in the leadership and management area, merged together. We're trying to bring everybody back together. We're trying to get scaled. That way we can better represent everybody. And we've also brought in 2 smaller groups, NAILBA, which represents the brokerage and distribution side of the business. So the BGAs, IMOs, all now are part of the FinSec umbrella in the Form 400 life insurance producer community as well. We've got 4 key pillars: elevate, accelerate, advocate, educate. I'm going to spend most of my time on advocate, but we also believe the other ones are super important as well. We need to elevate the brand and recognition of the financial advisor. We've got to make it easier for you all to do business on the day-to-day, and that's really our brand and reputation, public image, our public affairs arm. Accelerate, we do a bunch of professional development, networking events, things like that. Advocate, we're both federal and state on the advocacy side. And educate's really our foundation. That's our consumer-facing piece. We've got to continue to educate consumers about really the noble work that you all do. But for today, and I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly, but like I said, happy to take questions as we go. So back in now September, let me actually step back real quick. So there's been an ongoing called strife between our profession and the Department of Labor really for the past 15 years. This is the 4th attempt at a fiduciary proposal that we've faced within that time frame. So while it's resurfacing now, this really is this has been an ongoing issue for the past really decade and a half. So back in September, it was essentially leaked that the Department of Labor was going to be pursuing this year. But it really came to a head in November when essentially after the bill was announced, the President of the United States in front of the national media essentially came on saying that commissions are junk fees and state regulation is inadequate. Like 2 things that at the highest level, we had a variety of different issues with the proposal, one of them being how offensively framed it is with these 2 type quotes on that, you'll see on the screen here. And I'm going to come back to the substance in a minute, but these 2 quotes are things that we just can't have. Like as a profession, commissions are junk fees, we push back on that immediately. We know that commissions are not junk fees. We know that commissions gives more people access to advice than would have otherwise, and also brings more people in the business than would have access to. And we know that we need more Americans and consumers to have access to financial advice, not less. And by eliminating commissions is not going to get that done. And state regulation is not inadequate. We've got 42 states now, almost 43 have adopted NAIC's best interest for annuities model. We know that some states have probably actually taken it too far. I'm sure some of you are licensed in the state of New York. If I was in person, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you're licensed in the state of New York, and keep your hand up if you have fun being licensed in the state of New York, because typically the answer is no. So we know that some states have even taken it too far. So I'm going to get into just the substance a little bit. So essentially, really what we believe that this is a broader attack on commissions, and I'm going to go through just kind of a little bit more of the substance, but ultimately we think this is a broad attack on commissions. The commission evasive advice model is not only under attack in our profession, but in others as well. It's an attack with real estate. It's a broader trend on professionals that can receive commissions. So this rule, as proposed, basically seeks to make everybody they can a fiduciary under ERISA. Why is that an issue? Because commissions are banned under that unless you have a couple of the available PTs or prohibitive transaction exemptions. Why is that an issue? Because they're basically going to make it harder to be able to receive those. 8424 is what a lot of career advisors use and a lot of folks in the profession use. It's going to make it almost impossible for most folks to use that PTE, and really is going to force as many folks as possible into 2020-02, which is a securities-based PTE. And the big issue with that one is essentially in a lot of cases, it's going to require the advisor and the carrier to be co-fiduciaries on cases, which we believe is just going to, a lot of carriers just aren't going to take the business is what we truly believe. So again, I'm happy to take questions on this, but this is just a little bit of the substance that that are front and center for us. Where we're at in the timeline, like I said, September is really where we started, and this timeline kind of goes through it. Came kind of front and center in November when it was announced. But where we're at right now, if I'm not sure if you can see my mouse on the screen, but we're in the happening now stage where the Department of Labor received 19,000 comments, which is a lot. There's definitely many like ours were anti the proposal. There are definitely some that come on the pro side, but they're legally obligated to review all 19,000. Our CEO says they are reading it, is the best way to put it, because they believe that they know that the will of they believe they're protecting Americans and the will of Americans. So we believe they've made their mind up for a while on that this is the type of bill they want to put forward. But this is an election year, and quite frankly, the Department of Labor wants to get this done in advance. So it's really an expedited timeline. And that's part of the reasons why we take it so seriously, besides the framing, besides the substance, because they're really trying to cram this in before the election. So what are we kind of doing? Where are we at? So a couple of big testimonies have happened recently. Our CEO, Mark Hayden, testified both in front of the Department of Labor in December and in front of a congressional subcommittee in January, both talking about how essentially the Department of Labor is thwarting the will of Congress. So, Anthony mentioned a couple of things like Congress is trying to give more people access to advice, with things like Secure 1.0, Secure 2.0. This is a proposal like this is essentially going in the opposite direction and thwarting the will of our elected officials. So we are leveraging our relationships on both sides of Congress. We have great relationships on both sides of the aisle. And what we are doing is and I'm going to go back to this slide quickly, but we are pushing for Congress to put forward called a no funds amendment, essentially trying to defund this proposal. So if the Department of Labor does come through and push the bill into act, essentially, if the no funds amendment went through, they would not be able to they would have no funds to enforce it. So Congress controls the purse strings. So we are really pushing our levers there to try to get that done. And sorry, my slides are not moving. And so we had 30 to 50 of our members in last week meeting with their their members of Congress, really trying to push this narrative forward. And if we are unsuccessful, the Fonseca and the broader industry is prepared for litigation. This happened in 2016. We are prepared if the Department of Labor does push this through. We are prepared to take this to the courts for sure. Why are we doing this all? Because we know the effect that bad regulation can have. This is what I was talking about a little bit in New York. After New York announced its best interest 187 rule in 2018, from 2019 to 2021, life insurance premiums rose across the country by about 12%, only by 3.5% in New York. And annuity premiums rose across the country, actually dropped over the same time period in the state of New York as well. So we know the negative impacts that this can have on people. I'm going to move through this. I know we're getting really close to the top of the hour. Why are we being attacked? That's part of this goes back into our Elevate pillar I was talking about earlier. There's a negative, connotation that our profession can have in the media. Things like insurance and investments can't mix, like things that we know are untrue. And the EY model proves many of these things. It has a negative impact on our profession, with the brand recognition. We need to continue to elevate it because it's going to make it much harder for us to be attacked, if we have a stronger eye in consumers and the media and within the government. Like I said, this is just kind of a reinforcement of our pillars. But why are we doing this all? Like, why are we bringing everybody back together? Why are we trying to grow membership? Because we know it's really important and we know that it can work. Those of you that have been in the business for a while, leading up into the 86 tax reform, there was a really serious attack with a potential proposed tax on inside buildup. Luckily, we were unified at the time. There was a unified voice under NALU was the group representing the profession at the time, had about 150,000 members, and ended up being able to kill the threat by a grassroots effort, essentially flooded Congress with letters that they ultimately were able to not only just beat it down there, but for a generation, there was no tax on inside build, proposed tax on inside buildup, no attacks on it because of the grassroots effort. So we know it works. But like I said earlier, now this is for the fourth time in 13 years, we're facing a battle with the Department of Labor on fiduciary type rules. And because we're fragmented, we're not big enough. We've got to keep growing because we've got to bring everybody back together. And so, like I said, Anthony, I thought teed it up really well. I know we've got a spot for everybody. Whether you're new in the business, been around for a while, in leadership, brokerage, we know that we've got a spot for everybody, and we really do need everybody to join. So, happy to take questions, Anthony. I know we're at the top of the hour, but
we are at the top of the hour, Jordan, but there's a couple really important questions that have come through just to best understand the impact of this. So like what is the probability that commission sales will go away if this goes through?
well, so it's a tricky question because the bill as it is very focused on on qualified dollars and annuities, but we firmly believe that this is the way to get at commissions broadly. Is it going to happen right away? Probably not, but this is the way to start the path. The Department of Labor actually referenced the UK, so they cited an article from the FCA, which is the group there, and the UK banned commissions, and so they cited the effect on why they did that, and it actually didn't hurt the business with some very inflated stats, but they cited the UK, which banned commissions broadly. And so, like I said, there's a specific target here on with qualified dollars, but we believe that is just the way to get commissions broadly. So I don't have a firm percentage, but it's a serious threat.
Jordan, the next question, this one's pretty important. So there was some business about a limited representation of carriers and a commitment to a carrier. Is this reared its head and developed any further?
Sorry, Anthony, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the multi-carrier offering. The question is has the multi-carrier offering picked up steam, and are fiduciaries responsible to recommend a limited number of carriers?
That is a good. So I don't have that. I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head. I'm happy to get that. Talk to our government affairs folks, and I'd be happy to provide an answer for that. Not that I'm aware of, but that just means I'm not as front and center as others are on this. But I'd be happy to get an answer for you.
Next question is, will carriers be forced to go to a levelized commission or fee-based structure?
Ultimately, we don't know that answer. We truly don't at the moment. The guess is it's likely going to be the only really answer is fee-based. That's in theory the only answer, but that is not something that has been determined at the time. And a lot of it may be up to the carrier's discretions as well. So there's really not that's part of the reason why there's such an issue with this being expedited as quickly as it is, because a lot of these questions there are not answers for.
Jordan, has this been postponed? One of the participants felt like that this should have been voted on already. Did the advocacy help with an extension?
So the short answer is no. The goal originally was to lengthen. There's been a couple goals. Lengthen the comment period. And with the old proposals, there was at minimum, and I think the smallest was 90 days. So we tried to get that lengthened, but it actually stayed at 60. So that there was no lengthening really there. We have a little bit more time for the no funds amendment that we're pushing for, but it's weeks, not any length of time, not really any substantive length of time.
And this was a significant bill, right, Jordan? This was like quite literally hundreds of pages that Congress has to kind of rip through and make quick decisions on.
Yeah, 100%. That's why, the tricky thing about this was really that, to your point, it's a massive bill and there's a lot of substance in there, and it's, not everything is applicable for everybody looking at. So, the carriers all we're digging deep into this. The trades like us were digging deep into this. And so with the expedited, comment period, it was quite frankly difficult. The hearing was there's a hearing about the comment period in the middle of the comment period. That's just unheard of. 45 days into a 60-day comment period, you have a hearing on it. That's just so that's why we think we have a good argument if it does get to litigation, but that doesn't mean we're not trying to fight it down now.
Lastly, Jordan, 5 minutes past the top of the hour. what can the participants on this call do to help our cause?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the first thing, and I know it sounds simple, and obviously there's an investment that comes from it, but membership is really important, and we've got to keep growing. This is the one thing that really matters most to members of Congress. Whenever we do a meeting, they're like, "What's your membership like, and is it growing? And how many people do I have in my state?" So it sounds simple, but it really is so important. And then the other thing I can do, we have an action alert, Anthony, that I'll send over to you, where folks, whether you're members or not, in basically 3 clicks, can send a letter to their member of Congress and say, "Hey, I'm a member in your district. This is really important to me, and I need you to help act on it." We need as many people as possible filling that out because we need our voice heard. So I'm happy to provide that in the follow-up.
I'll be sure to circulate that link to each of the participants. Just a quick shout out to, just so you know, the company you keep. So Fonseca is over 9,000 members, up 30%, right, since this
Yeah.
half-cracked idea was introduced through the Department of Labor. Some of the company you'd keep, right, over 2,000 M Financial members,
Yeah.
over 1,400 Mass Mutual members, over 900 Northwestern members, over 700 NFP members, over almost 500 Guardian members, over 200 independents. Cetero, by far the largest broker dealer with 163 members. Equitable Advisors, 190 members. So, this is a unified front. We need to protect our industry. Sometimes these things pop up every here and again. The tax law changes are somewhat fluid, but this one would really impact the ability for us to earn and give consumers advice that is so well needed. So, Jordan, I'd like to just thank you for coming in back into this presentation. I want to thank all the participants for attending. Our recording should be complete in about an hour. We'll make sure that that's circulated at some point over the next 24 hours. And again, you know where to find us, whether it be questions related to the content of the webinar, or you want to get active with Fonseca, or at very least, you want to drop a note to your local congressman or woman. I would encourage you, please do so. And we appreciate you. Thanks for being with us, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.